Yo, what's up, Broncos country? How's it going tonight, guys? This is Eddie with Colorado Sports Connection, and tonight we are joined with Baylor. He's filling in tonight for Muhammad, who's going to be out for the next couple of weeks, and he's actually going to be filling in for Muhammad for the next couple of weeks. But tonight we're going to go over hot coaches and if they're their rankings on the hot seat and what could that mean for each ball club, and if they could be fired mid-season, end of season, whichever. So let's get into this. So Baylor, I wanted to get into this whole thing. Like I've been seeing this a lot lately, all over the place. A lot of the coaches I ranked, from one being, they're not going to get fired at all, to five that they're definitely on the hot seat, that it's most likely going to happen. They're going to get fired. And I went through all the divisions, all the teams, and looked at the rosters, what they did last year, and seeing what they're going to do, this year, and if the coach is going to be on the hot seat or not. The first team I got on here is, I believe, the New Orleans Saints with Dennis Allen. I got him sitting at a 4 out of 5. What is your take on that? It seems like we're having some technical issues here, guys. Um. Anyway, oh, maybe he's coming back on. Let's just wait a second here and see if he pops back up here. Seems like we're having some real bad technical difficulties tonight, guys. Sorry about that. But we'll see if he comes back on. But let's start getting into this. So I got Dennis Allen at a 4 out of 5. Um, as to be fired. Like I said, with five being, the seat's on fire. I just don't see how Dennis Allen. Honestly, I don't see how he's still really the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. It's wild to me. Like they should have honestly won their division last year. I mean, that division is just a hot mess. But with that said, Allen, he had Derek. They went out and got Derek Carr last offseason. They still had the talent. Granted, they're really, really in salary cap hell. But it's just like, he's got some big shoes to fill there in New Orleans, with Sean Payton coming here to Denver. And they just didn't do well last year. And, it showed. So with the talent that they have on that roster, there's no reason why they couldn't, at least win that division. I mean, before Sean Payton left, he stacked that roster relatively well. And it just doesn't make sense to me how he still has a job. You had Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara. You had still a top 10 or a top ranked defense. You still had a lot of good players on there. You had Derek Carr, who's a solid quarterback. It just doesn't make sense how they could not, for the life of me, get past, or get into the playoffs, honestly. So I got Dennis Allen at a 4 out of 5 for the Saints, just with that roster and everything. So that's where I sit on that. The next coach I got here is Raheem Morris with the Atlanta Falcons. Now, this one, I maybe should have gave it a 1, but I gave it a 2 because with the Falcons this year, everybody was surprised with what they did in the draft. 8th overall pick, they go and get freaking Michael Penix after signing Kirk Cousins to like $100 million deal. And it just didn't make any sense to me. They really, really needed help on defense. And with Raheem Morris running the show over there, being a defensive guy, you think they would have got some defense. But maybe he has trust in himself, a lot of trust in himself to get the most out of that defense without having to sacrifice picks, which, I mean, it's not really sacrificing because you desperately need defensive help. But maybe he sees something in that unit that, he's like, no, there's some untapped potential here. I don't need to waste the 8th overall pick on a defensive guy, to build this defense because there's a lot of talent on this defense, and I can get the most out of it and make this a good defense. So they took Michael Penix, but I got Raheem Morris at a 2 out of 5. And the reason why is because I don't think he's anywhere near close. I think the Falcons, like we seen it, granted with, Dan Quinn, he got him to a Super Bowl with Matt Ryan. He lasted a few more years after that. Heck, even Arthur Smith lasted a couple of years there, and he was terrible. Like his best players, he was like, no, I'm going to go with my 3rd string wide receiver or my 3rd string running back, and I'm going to design plays for them. And the heck with the freaking, good players, the top players on my team. So I believe that Raheem Morris is going to have like a lot of leeway this year. Honestly, especially since they drafted Michael Penix, he might even get, you know, like 3 years, 4 years, you know, and I don't see Raheem Morris getting fired right now. I really don't. Like it just doesn't seem plausible to me at this point, that but I did give him a 2 out of 5, only for, like this whole Michael Penix thing. Like if Kirk Cousins, goes out and he plays well and he's there for the next 4 years, like the contract that he signed, and Michael Penix doesn't play at all, like that could come back to bite him. And the defense struggles, like that could really come back to bite him. The ownership could be like, hey, you had the 8th overall pick, you could have got, a defensive guy, to help the defense. And we got Kirk Cousins, we can get a quarterback down the road at some point. So if that happens, like if the defense is just absolute garbage and Cousins plays phenomenal to where drafting Michael Penix was like an idiot move, he could possibly be fired. But I don't think that's going to happen this season. It might take 2 seasons. So that's what I think about that. The next team I got here is the Bucks with Bulls. I got him as a 4 out of 5. Now, honestly, I think a lot of people were shocked that he was not fired at the end of last season. But with the resurgence of Baker Mayfield, it's like, okay, they got into the playoffs. You really couldn't fire Todd Bowles for that. But was that, and was that like an outlier year last year for the Bucks and Baker Mayfield? I don't know. I know they lost some key players in free agency this year. Oh, good. Baylor's back. What's up, man?
Hi. Sorry, one of my laptops decided it doesn't want to charge anymore, so I had to switch to my other laptop, which is a whole different
Oh,
setup.
it's all good. But I can get you caught up real quick. Um, I'm only down to the Bucks head coach Bowles right now, but I went through the Saints and the Falcons, but I got the Saints, Allen at 4 out of 5. What are your thoughts on that?
Saints, Allen, 4 out of 5. I think that's a safe place to put him. Short of something disastrous happening this season, there's no reason he should be on a hot seat this year.
Oh no, five's they're going to be fired most likely, like 100%. And one's like cold.
Why do you feel like the Saints are on a? Sorry, I'm pulling up. I'm getting a
Oh no, no,
little
you're
bit of
good.
a scrambled. Here we go. Okay, Dennis Allen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you want to tell me why, real quick, just brief spark note on why you said he's at a 4?
Because I just think, I'm pretty sure they didn't make the playoffs last year. And I know there was a lot of talk last year with, him being on the hot seat and him actually being fired last year. They went out, got Derek Carr. They had a talented roster. And I understand, that division's not the best, but it's like they refused to rebuild. And I mean, I understand that could be on the GM and the coach too a little bit. Like they need to tear it down. Like I think after Sean Payton left, they should have tore it down. And honestly, I hear a lot of rumors that the players really don't like Dennis Allen. Like that, I mean, not saying that he's a bad guy, but it's just it doesn't seem like they're really working well together.
Yeah, so then I'm gonna go ahead and put him at a 3, kind of right in the middle. I can see it going both ways. I don't think. I don't know. I feel like you said, a lot of it is coming from management. How much do you believe they're actually going to tear it down? If they want to go hard rebuild, hard to hard to say he's going to stay. But at the same time, I don't think that's a hot seat. I don't think so much of it is on him. You know what I mean? Job security and hot seat, I feel like are different things. Like I feel like just because you're not on the hot seat doesn't mean your job is safe. It might not be your fault, but if your team scraps and rebuilds, you're going to, whether it's your fault or not. So kind of in the middle there, not necessarily the safest job, but at the same time, like you said, it's got a talented roster. And if they can make something work, they could actually make him look pretty good with a good turnaround from one year to the next. It could make him look really good if he turned this next season into something decent. So I'd probably put him right in the middle at a 3 there.
Okay. The next head coach we got is the Falcons head coach, Raheem Morris. I got him as a 2 out of 5. I don't think he's
Um,
going anywhere.
he's a rookie, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, no, he's not going anywhere short of no. I don't think there's any reason he should be going anywhere. First of all, he's a rookie. Second of all, he's got a brand new quarterback to a brand new team, right? Obviously, Kirk Cousins is a vet, but still brand new town, brand new system. Kirk's been in Minnesota for a long time. You got to imagine there's going to be some adjustment. It's also a very young team. I know it's talented, but it is young. So I would imagine that with between the rookie head coach, the young core, all of that type of stuff, I really feel like he's probably sitting at a 1. There's no way, short of like misconduct, that he's going anywhere in his first year.
the only reason why I have him as a 2 out of 5 is like there's only one thing that could happen to me that could maybe give him like that bumped him up to a 2 for me. That could possibly happen is that I understand Kirk Cousins' new system coming off an injury, but say Kirk Cousins comes in, he plays lights out. They signed him to that, $100 million deal, and then they take the eighth overall pick, and get a quarterback, which okay, cool. You're thinking about the future, that's fine. Well, and he comes in and he's looking at the roster. There's not a whole lot of great talent on that side of the ball on the defensive side. Granted, he is a defensive guy, maybe he came in. He's like, what, there's talent on the team, and I can get the best out of them. Like, I don't need to take the eighth overall pick and go get contributor right now. I can just, you know, take this defense and I can work with it. The only thing I can think of that could happen that would maybe start putting him on the hot seat after this year is if that defense is just flat out terrible and Kirk Cousins looks amazing. And then it's like, well, why'd you draft Michael Penix? You could
Yeah,
have got a defensive star to help.
exactly. And again, you talk about drafting and stuff like that. A rookie head coach is going to have little to no say in that. Obviously, they probably were like, "Hey, do you like Michael Penix? Like, if we drafted him, would you like him on your team?" Just because the head coach says yes doesn't mean it's blame on the head coach, especially when it's a rookie. It's not like they're sitting there putting all of their chips in based on what he's saying. So, there's no reason there. Even if the defense is terrible, then hey, he's a rookie. Again, it's hard to get fired in your first year, short of something super egregious. Now, if he turns into some Nathaniel Hackett who's completely incompetent at game management, again, that's egregious. That's like something like that's an outlier. But if you're just talking about, the team got 4 or 5 wins and it's not at all what you expected with this talent, there's no way this team is going to get like blown out in every single game. Worst case scenario, it's going to be high scoring offensive games. And then, yeah, you can be like, hey, look, bud, you're a defensive guy. You need to get the defense going here. But again, you're going to give him that second year with time with the team. You're going to give him time to actually pick some nice defensive young talent in that year's draft coming up. So I think he's pretty safe this year, but I hear you on putting him at a 2.
Well, the next one I got is Todd Bowles for the Bucks. Now, on this one, I mean, I think based on what I've heard so far, I think we're probably going to disagree. I got after what happened with the Bucks last year and the resurgence of Baker Mayfield. I got Todd Bowles at a 4 because they were talking a lot last year about him being fired. You know, and I don't. I hope last year for the Bucks wasn't an outlier. Like, oh, that was just an outlier season. Baker Mayfield had a solid season, kind of like what Geno Smith went through a few years ago. And, if that's the case, hopefully that defense is humming this year. I'm pretty sure they lost some contributors on that team. I can't remember all who they lost, but um, I just feel like the Bucks, they're in a win now mode. They paid Baker Mayfield all that money. They still have some stars on the team. They're in win now mode. Like I feel like if they don't, maybe have a winning record, that he's out the building. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I can absolutely see that, but I'm gonna go back with our the first who I don't remember, the Saints. I think same concept here for me. Um, I don't think there's anything he can do that is going to get him fired without a rebuild. If they come out and the team's terrible, I think everyone's gone. I think it's a team that is in win now mode that shouldn't be. which is a very precarious spot as a head coach. So as far as like hot seat goes, I'd put him at a 3 because I don't think he's going to be taking much of the blame. But as far as job security goes, yeah, it's all dependent on your record this year. You don't make the playoffs, I think there's a very good chance Tampa Bay gets blown up pretty good. Might be a 2-year blow up process, but if you're going to do a 2-year blow up, one of the first things to go is the head coach so that you can rebuild with that new coach's mentality, kind of like what we were doing here in Denver with Sean Payton. But I put him at a 3, like I said. It's not at all safe, but again, I don't think it's really going to be so much him that goes alone.
Okay. Well, the last team in that division is the Panthers, and honestly, um, I got Canales at a 4 out of 5 too. Not because of him. Like I don't think he's like him personally. I think he'll be fine. It's not him I'm worried about. It's David Tepper. I mean, he's been and he's owned that team for what 5, 6 years, and they've already went through like 4 head coaches or 3 head coaches. Like David Tepper is a meddlesome owner. He's very trigger happy. Like if the Panthers don't, honestly, they don't freaking just blow out everybody. It seems like David Tepper is going to be like, you know what, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired. And that's the only reason why I say that. Like if the Panthers don't, like I don't expect the Panthers to do much this year. Honestly, like it's a rebuilding team. They got some young pieces, and hopefully, those pieces turn into something good. But if the Panthers don't come out on fire, I think David Tepper, since he's so impulsive, he's just gonna be like, "You're fired." Like that's the only reason why I got Canales at a 4 out of 5. What say you?
I'm gonna put him at a 2. The only reason I don't have him at a 1 is for the exact same reason you have him at a 4, is unstable and very sporadic ownership and management, which makes it very difficult for anyone to have any sort of job security. But like you said, I think one of your other points is what drives it down for me. How many years of, how many coaches in how many years? It's got to stop eventually, right? And you know what? You've got a brand new rookie, right? This guy, David, what is it, Canales? He's a rookie too,
Yeah,
right? Yeah,
yeah.
no, I mean,
He
again,
came over from the Bucks.
exactly. And this is a team that came off a bad season. If this was a team full of talent or a team that was kind of like middle of the road but came off a better than expected season, then maybe I'd put him at a 3. But no, this team is coming in with zero expectation from anybody around the league. The only thing he can do is do better than last year, really. But again, very temperamental management and ownership mixed with the possibility of a team like the Panthers realistically only winning one game, one or maybe even 2 games might be a recipe to lose your job no matter how new to the gig you are. So I'll put them at a 2 there. Don't really see that happening. Kind of hard to lose that many games in the NFL these days. So 2 is a good place for me for him.
All right, cool. Well, now we're gonna move over to the NFC East, and the first team I got on here is the Eagles with Sirianni. Now this one I know you're
Hot.
yeah, I
Hot.
got him at a 4 out of 5 because I still think there's a chance. I still think there's a chance the Eagles, like to me, they have to win the Super Bowl this year. But I mean, a lot of things could happen. Injuries, whatever. Maybe they lose player, like I said, players injury. But I was close to putting him at a 5. I mean, he's like right there teetering at the 4 to the 5. But I think if they make the Super Bowl but they lose it, I think Sirianni might be safe. But if they don't make the Super Bowl, I think he is gone.
Yeah, I agree. I think anything short of the championship game, and he's gone for sure. I put him at a 5 versus your 4 for one extra reason, and that's because he has a reputation for outside of like off-field antics. Like how many times you hear about him like mouthing off to fans or disagreeing with, players or management, or there's so many other things. He's not a likable guy. You hear that in the locker room, and I think we were seeing the beginning of the end of the Eagles last year. There was so much drama. They didn't look like the same team. You had Jalen Hurts learning, like being spending practice learning how to hold on to the ball. I feel like there's a lot more going on back there culturally, and a lot of that comes from the head coach. And you can totally see some of that cattiness in the locker room absolutely comes from the cattiness of their head coach. So you take in that personality factor on top of the fact that they've been right there for so long and they're just trying to get over that hump. You know, he's this it's short of winning a Super Bowl, this dude's probably gone. And I say that more realistically because I don't think the Eagles are going to be as good as they've been the last few years because of that drama, because of the questions surrounding their head coach and his antics and his job. So for me, he's a 5.
And honestly, you also throw in the fact that they fired Doug Peterson, a guy that won them their first Super Bowl.
Yeah,
And I mean, yeah, he's not even nowhere close to being that safe, if you ask me. The next one is McCarthy with the Cowboys. I got him as a 5 out of 5.
same.
He should have been fired last year, honestly.
Agreed.
The constant choking in the playoffs and the fact that, you talked about a little bit earlier, if like a team's going to strip everything down, and start rebuilding, the coach has got to go. And honestly, at the end of this year, like we heard that CD Lamb's not reporting to camp. Michael Parsons is looking for a new deal, just like CD Lamb. Dak Prescott's wanting a new deal, and they're not giving it. They haven't gave it to him yet. They're talking about him walking next year in free agency. I believe the Cowboys, even if they make the playoffs, but they falter again in like the first or second round, and they get eliminated from it, Dak's probably going to be gone. Unless they pay CD or Michael Parsons, those guys are going to be gone. And then I would say Mike McCarthy's gone.
Yeah, I don't think Dak is coming back. If he does come back, it's a terrible football move. I think he is way too old to be re-signing to a contract. He's way too old, has way too much experience for as little as he's done when it matters, which is the postseason, especially if you're in a place like Dallas where the ownership is so hands-on and Jerry Jones expects results because the people in Texas are really hard on the Cowboys and how they are every year. They have high expectations no matter what the roster looks like, no matter who's head coach. And the fact that Mike McCarthy didn't get fired last year. And the thing is about Mike McCarthy is he's not just fighting the previous years of dysfunction in Dallas. He's also fighting his reputation of not being able to get back over that hump in Green Bay. It's
Yep.
not just a Dallas thing with McCarthy. He's got a track record of not being able to get over that hump again, you know? So I think Mike McCarthy is definitely a 5 out of 5. And you're talking before we started about this, before I disconnected about, what the likelihood of like mid-season firing and everything. Mike McCarthy to me is a prime mid-season fire for me. He's got a hot-headed owner who wants to win, and he's got a lot of disarray on his team this year, talking about CD Lamb not reporting. That's a culture problem. People don't want to stay in Dallas. How many times have you heard of a football player not wanting to play for the Dallas freaking Cowboys? It doesn't happen. It does not happen. And that's a culture problem. And again, said this before, when you have culture problems, first place you have to look is your head coach. Mike McCarthy, 5 out of 5, probably not making it through the season unless the Cowboys play fantastic.
Do you think he could possibly be the first head coach fired during midseason?
Absolutely, 100%, especially, and that honestly, that's more because of Jerry Jones than anything else. It's just hot hands-on ownership in that particular situation with a high expectation from everyone around that organization. Yeah, he's in a really tough place to coach and to play, and he is, like I said, I mean, if they start the season like 1-5, he might be out before a bye.
Yeah, I could totally agree. Heck, even if they're not, I think even if they're at 500, like just teetering at the 500, like he could be
Yeah,
gone because like
yeah,
the Cowboys have been really good, regular season wise for
yeah,
years.
yep.
So, but the next coach I got here is the Commanders, Dan Quinn. I got him at a 2 out of 5. I don't think he's going anywhere. Like it would have to be something of disaster of epic proportions for Dan Quinn to get fired. He did well, with Matt Ryan in Atlanta with that defense. He had the Dallas defense looking great, which is I think another reason why the Cowboys are probably going to struggle this year without Quinn or Parsons if he decides not to show up. But I got him at a 2 out of 5, especially with a
Remind
rookie quarterback. What do you think?
remind me about. Sorry, it's just there's a lot of sports teams, and I'm fresh off a vacation. I follow a lot of sports. What do the Commanders do this off season?
um,
They do
I know
anything?
last season they traded Montez Sweat, they traded Chase Young, and the biggest move they did, I believe, I don't remember everything they did in the draft, but they drafted Jaden Daniels, and I'm pretty sure he's
Oh,
going to be the day
okay.
one starter.
All right. Yeah, I'll put him at a 1 out of 10. Dan Quinn, I think is a respected enough name in the NFL circles that he's guaranteed, short of a winless season, he's guaranteed at least 2 years in Washington. Like you said, I think he did pretty solid with what they had going on in Atlanta. And honestly, Jaden Daniels has the potential to be a stud in this league if his skills translate the way the scouts say they will. It's always so hard analyzing college talent, obviously, but that's another reason why I really think Dan Quinn is going to get more than 1 year, and I'm going to put him at a 1 because he's got a rookie quarterback. He's got a young team. If there's not a lot different from last year, they've got a very young team that does have some talent on it, but between that, new head coaching, you got to give it time. And I think with new ownership down in Washington, they're or up in over in the capital, they're going to be able to give him at least 2 years. So I'll put him at a 1.
Okay. Next one is the Giants head coach Ryan Daboll. I got him sitting at a 4 out of 5 because there was a lot of ramblings of him getting fired last season. Um, because he was supposed to come in and fix Daniel Jones. Like we seen what he did with Josh Allen in Buffalo. He developed Josh Allen perfect. But then he came over and he was the head coach of the Giants, and he was like to fix the team, but he was also here to fix Daniel Jones. And to me, I put him at a 4 out of 5 for the simple fact that I understand, they lost Saquon this offseason. They didn't really have a whole lot of weapons, but it's like, yeah, you got neighbors, but who's throwing to him? Daniel Jones. Like, I think, him not taking a quarterback in the first round this year really put him closer to the 5 area of the hot seat. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think everyone knows that Brian Dable has a little bit more pull in the draft room than some of these younger coaches do. Um, Also, similarly to playing in Dallas, playing for New York, specifically the Giants, I'd say probably get it a little harder than the Jets do. Um, Very critical place to play. The fans expect a lot every single year, no matter what their roster looks like. I mean, they went on 2 magical Super Bowl runs with teams that shouldn't be there. They expect great things no matter what the roster looks like, and they always will. Management's the same thing. It's the way it works in a big city like New York, where everyone is super proud. That being said, you talked about a lot of rumbling last year. We've talked about how this team is just not got a bunch of talent. They've overpaid Daniel Jones, and unfortunately, the only reason I'm not putting him at a 5 is because this team just needs to be scrapped. And I do think a decent amount of it might, he didn't do what he was supposed to do last year as well as he was supposed to do it. Um, but yeah, I just think there needs to be a lot of retooling and a little bit of rebuilding over there in New York. And part of that is probably just new coaching as well. Um, so I don't want to fully put it on Dable, so I'll put him at a 4.
All right. So moving on to the NFC North. Um, the first team I got in here is the Packers with LaFleur. I got him as a 1 out of 5. Like with him, he had the youngest team in NFL into the playoffs. Granted, they were only 9-8, but I don't think he's going anywhere. I think it looks like a smart move for him. They kept Rodgers. They drafted, Love, like what was it, 4 or 5 years ago, and let him sit behind Rodgers. And honestly, with having that team as young as it was into the playoffs, especially with the Lions in that division last year, like I don't see him going anywhere. Like I don't think the Packers are going to move on from him. What are your thoughts?
I don't think anyone in the NFC North is on the hot seat. Um, LaFleur did an wait. We're talking about LaFleur, right?
Yeah. the
Yeah,
Packers.
yeah, yes. So, yeah, he did an excellent job with the transition from Rodgers to Love. They've got an incredible young team, and young teams like young head coaches, and he is proven to be a player's coach that the players love and rally behind. He's an incredible offensive mind with incredible offensive weapons he knows how to develop. Um, Short of personal off the field issues, there's no way LaFleur is going anywhere from Green Bay anytime soon. Definite one.
Okay. Next team I got is the Vikings with Aiden O'Connell. I got him as a 1 out of 5. Like he
Too much
actually,
change.
yeah, new young quarterback. They got, Dalvin Cook's gone. They just paid Justin Jefferson, but also offensive minded guy, young rookie quarterback. And the fact that that team, those players love O'Connell. Like they play hard for him whenever they can, or all the time, honestly. So I got him as a 1 out of 5. What about you?
Well, we saw in the Hard Knocks with the or not the Hard Knocks. Did you watch Quarterback, the
I
Netflix
watched some of
show?
it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everyone loves. He is such a player's guy. He wears his emotions on his sleeve. All the players would run through a wall for him. There's too much new on his team this year for any sort of dip in production from last year. I mean, going from Kirk Cousins to a rookie quarterback is going to be rough for any head coach. But there's just too much different on this team to really blame him for anything. This is definitely a question we'll be asking if they don't have an upward trajectory in 2 to 3 years. So one for me.
Okay. The next one, this is a big, big one for me. I almost had it at a 0, honestly. Um, with Dan Campbell with the Lions, I got him as a 1 out of 5. He had the Lions in the NFC Championship game, won the first playoff game, got him in the playoffs for like the first time in like 30 something years. I got him as a 1 out of 5. Players love him. He's a good head coach. He's got that team ready every week. Like he ain't going nowhere.
I think the city of Detroit would revolt if Dan Campbell was ever fired. I think every player, every person in management and ownership, every single person in Detroit, every Lions fan around the globe loves that man and what he has done for that franchise. The Lions are the most relevant they've ever been in their history, despite having people like Megatron and Barry Sand, not yeah, uh,
Yeah, you're right. Barry Sanders,
yeah, Barry Sanders. I almost said
Matthew
Barry Bonds,
Stafford.
but yes, Barry Sanders. I mean, all of this, and they're most relevant now with Jared Goff as their quarterback because of that man and his mentality that he's instilled in the culture there. So again, if the scale was down, it went down to a 0, I'd put him there. But for consistency's sake, we'll keep him at a 1.
Okay. The last team in the NFC North, and I know you said that you don't have any teams in the North that are going to be a 5, but I do, and that's the Bears with Matt Eberflus. The guy should have been fired last year. He's terrible. Um, and honestly, I thought he would have got fired the second we saw that the Bears had the number 1 overall pick. Everybody and their moms knew that the Bears were going to take a quarterback because it was clear at the end of last season they were done with Justin Fields. And like you said earlier in the video, if you're going to, get a new quarterback, just tear it all down and get yourself a new head coach. Honestly, I thought that would have been the smart move for the Bears. Go get yourself an offensive minded guy and get Caleb Williams and bring him in and start, the rebuild there. But they doubled down. They went out. They got, I think it was Keenan Allen. They still got DJ Moore. They got Cole Kmet. They traded for Sweat last year. Um, but honestly, to me, he should have been fired at the end of last season, but I got him as a 5 out of 5. If the Bears don't play well or if they're under 500 by midseason, I see him gone. What about you?
I got him at a 2. Um, the hottest one in this division. They're not going to be bad. That's the problem. He's not going anywhere because their team is stacked now, and the ability for like it will have to be spectacular for that to be a bad team next year. And I think because of that, and because they have a rookie quarterback, but the fact they got Caleb Williams and surrounded him with talent, like I don't see them I don't see them having a bad year, and if you don't have a bad year, there's no reason to fire your coach, especially if you have a rookie quarterback. So whether it's deserved or not, that's not what I'm saying. I think he's pretty secure in his spot.
Okay. So now moving on to the NFC West, last division in the NFC, and then we'll move over to the AFC. Seahawks, McDonald. I think he came over from the Philadelphia Eagles, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. But I had a couple days ago, or actually a couple weeks ago, I should say, I had him at a 3 out of 5. I got him as a 2 out of 5 because the Seahawks got a good roster, and Geno Smith, we're going to see what he does this year. But if he doesn't do well, they're going to wind up moving on from him, and they're going to have to draft a rookie next year. Like he had that one good year after Russ left in 2022. Last year he didn't do well. If he doesn't do well this year, he's gone. But I don't think they're going to move on from McDonald. The Seahawks really ain't that impulsive. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, they've got really good ownership, really stable ownership. I mean, you can see that they dedicated themselves to Pete Carroll until he was done. Um, i- Ups and downs, good and bad. They believed in him, and they put their money where their mouth was. They're like, we're gonna pay you this much money over this many years, and they just did that until he said he was done. So um, this is not an impulsive group. There's no way they get rid of a head coach after 1 year, especially looking at this roster. I think what we did see out of the Seahawks the last 2 years, that competitive team, that one that was surprisingly competitive 2 years ago, and the one that was not as much, but still not a fun team to play against last year, how much of that was Pete Carroll, one of the greatest coaches of all time? You know,
Yeah.
how much of it was it? We're about to find out, right? And
Yep.
if the Seahawks suck next year, I don't think anybody in the NFL world is going to look at the coach and be like, oh, look at this roster that you screwed up with your coaching. No, everyone's going
Yeah.
to be like, yeah, dude, you got Geno Smith as your quarterback. What are you going to do? So I put him at a 1. There's no reason he's going anywhere. And again, if this team does need to rebuild, which we all know it does, but that's what they're trying to find out this year, they're going to rebuild with his wants in mind.
Nice take. So moving on to the next team, Los Angeles Rams with Sean McVay. I got him as a 1 out of 5. He's not going nowhere. The only way I see Sean McVay leaving the Rams is if he chooses to retire, like he was talking about at the end of last season. So, he's always got that team ready. He's one of the best offensive minded coaches in the game. You don't move on from him. He won your team a Super Bowl after like 20 years of not getting one after he won the one in 2000. But I got him as a 1 out of 5. What about you?
Same boat here. Sean McVay, one of the elite coaches in the league. He leaves when he wants to.
Yep. Moving on to the next team, the Cardinals with Gannon. I got him as a 2 out of 5. And the only reason why I say that is because I don't think the Cardinals are going to move on from him. Like, honestly, this team last year under Gannon had more fight in them. And granted, they went, I think what was it, like 4-13 or something. They weren't very good. But you could see that they were fighting. They played hard for Gannon, and I think the ownership sees that. I think they give him at least a couple more years, and let him fill out the roster his way. Before they're like, hey, if it goes south, then yeah, like they're like, yeah, you're terrible. You took a major crap. Like he would have to lose more than 4 games, honestly, this year, and the team would just have to implode upon itself. What about you?
Yeah, short of some, I'll put him at a 2. Short of a disaster, there's really not much that I can see him forcing his way out. I think everyone can tell the culture in Arizona got a lot better once he showed up, and continuing to feed a good culture will attract new players, will teach young players through drafting how to play and respect each other throughout the league, and that's how you build a good team from the ground up. And I think they like the person he is, and the players play hard for him. And again, short of a disaster, no reason he's going anywhere. I think 2 is a good spot.
And the last team in the NFC and the NFC West is the 49ers with Shanahan. Now, this one pains me to say this. I don't have him at a 4 or a 5. I have him at a 3. only because like the 49ers are there every year. Like they're right there. I feel like the ownership group in or the owners in San Francisco, they want that Super Bowl. They've been close in the past 5 years. They got in there twice. And it's just like the 49ers falter in the Super Bowl. Like they can't do it. Now Shanahan's a mastermind. Like I don't want to say he's gonna get fired because he's his dad and also Christian McCaffrey with his dad both playing for the Broncos or coaching for the Broncos. I have a hard time saying this, but I think it's a 3 out of 5. But they have to win the Super Bowl this year. They have to. Like they're so close. He's traded a bunch of picks away to stack that roster. He's got all this talent. Purdy's coming up to actually get paid too. What's he going to do with that? Is he going to pay Purdy? Are they going to go back to the draft and get another quarterback? What say you?
I think Mike Shanahan leaves San Francisco when he wants to. I think he's at a 1. I think any team in the NFL that fires Mike Shanahan should be sold immediately because it is
Kyle.
Kyle. Sorry, I know. Sorry. But he's practically the same. It's the same thing with
Yeah.
Mike Shanahan. For me, I was floored when actual Mike was fired. I was like, how do you fire that man? I mean, obviously, I don't want to question Pat Bowlen, but these guys' brains just work differently. And the fact that Kyle Shanahan is able to make any quarterback just work is extremely valuable. Now, what they're going to do, I have no idea. Because if I were the 49ers and I had Kyle Shanahan, I'd draft a new QB. I'd go get a cheap QB in a bridge if you don't see one that you like coming up, whatever you do, if you're Kyle Shanahan, you are begging management to not pay Brock Purdy. You cannot not pay that man. He deserves a big payday. But you have proven time and time again, quarterback after quarterback, you do not care who is throwing the ball as long as you can have your skill position players. And for me, again, it's whatever the ownership decides to do. How much power are they willing to give Kyle, you know? And at the end of the day, anyone who fires him is crazy. I think people know that, and I think he's a 1.
All right, cool. So now we're going to be moving over to the AFC. We're going to start in the
Ooh,
AFC
heading
South.
home.
And the first team I got up here is the Jacksonville Jaguars with Doug Peterson. I got him as a 2 out of 5. Um, Trevor Lawrence, they just gave him a big payday. The roster is good. I mean, Doug Peterson, Super Bowl winning head coach. That team, from the previous coach with I forgot who it was that was the head coach there before Doug Peterson, but
Urban.
he was Urban Meyer was just a disaster. So unless the Jacksonville Jaguars just like completely go out there and implode, I mean they kind of did at the end of last season. Like no one expected to see that from the Texans and the Jaguars. That at the end of the year just, but unless it's like a disaster of epic proportions, I just don't see him getting fired with Trevor Lawrence. He's made Trevor Lawrence look better. The offenses look better. The teams look better. What say you?
Pretty much the same stuff, man. I mean, Trevor Lawrence is such a weird case because he was supposed to be the next Andrew Luck / John Elway, the next guarantee, the next can't miss superstar. There's only been 2 other players ever like him. How can you judge that first season? Like, with all of the shenanigans going on with Urban Meyer and that whole absolute disaster, what's a kid gonna do? Okay, you move on to the second year. He's good. Trevor Lawrence is good. He is not Andrew Luck. He's not John Elway. And people saying, well, just give him time and wait. No. Giving them time and waiting means they are not Andrew Luck and John Elway because you did not need to give those people time, you know? So I think it's a catch 22 here for Doug Peterson because I feel like he's going to unfairly take blame if Trevor Lawrence is not Andrew Luck. And I think that's the only reason he might be sitting like a 2.5 to 3. If it was up to me, a 1. Like the difference between the first year and second year, unbelievable for Trevor Lawrence. But at the same time, I can't guarantee that with such a highly rated prospect like Trevor Lawrence not performing up to that level, that a head coach isn't going to take a huge chunk of that blame. So 3, maybe 2, somewhere in that area.
All right. Next coach, Colts, Shane Steichen. I got him as a 1 out of 5. He ain't going nowhere. The players love him in Indianapolis. After Anthony Richardson went down last year, man, he freaking had Gardner Minshew out there looking good. Like he is a good coach. And he's offensive minded. He's got the offense always ready to go. The whole team ready to go, honestly. And he can make a backup quarterback, be a starter all year and look good. So I don't think the Colts are going to move on from him. What say you?
Uh, like you said, if you can take a backup and make him that serviceable, imagine what you can do with actual talent at the most important position in the game. Um, I don't know what their plan is. If I'm being honest, I got zero clue about what the Colts have done this offseason. But if their plan is running back Richardson, like you can't blame the head coach because everywhere else worked great when he wasn't in. Not great, but much better when Richardson wasn't in control. So you either get the clear and obvious answer that Richardson is a problem, or he's better and you can praise um,
Shane
oh shoot,
Steichen?
yeah, you can praise Schneiden for the improvement. So that dude's safe, safe, safe.
Okay. The next one I got is the Titans coach, Callahan. I got him as a 2 out of 5. Kind of going back to like what we were talking about earlier, like this year for the Titans for me is like a year to where they're going to see what they have on the roster. And, I don't think Callahan's going to go anywhere, even if Will Levis is bad and, or not bad, but if they find out this year he's not the guy, I could see Callahan going into the draft next year and getting his guy. I think they're going to at least give him a chance to get his own guy in the building and see if he can, be the quarterback of the future. What say you?
It's a Sean Payton situation. There's been a couple of them that have come up this year, this show so far. Um, yeah, see what you got, play what you're gonna play, then take the off season to see what your head coach needs and wants, and build around his interests. Got a first year head coach with a team in transition right now. No reason to fire anybody this year for any reason, because it's not his team yet. So. Let's spin some tires, see how many miles they got on them, and see if we need some new ones, and then let's judge them maybe years 2 and 3 and see how that goes. But 1 for me.
Okay. And the last team in the AFC South, the Houston Texans, D'Amico Ryans. I got him as a 1 out of 5. After what they did last year, CJ Stroud being the second overall pick, and no one expecting anything out of the Texans. Like they were expecting, okay, maybe they'll come in third, maybe second in the division behind the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they're going to be solid. But he's a young rookie head coach with a young rookie quarterback, especially a defensive minded guy. They weren't really expecting, but the fact that he won that division and made the playoffs, and I can't remember, did they win their one game in the playoffs this year, or
Oh,
did they
it was
win?
so
I
long
can't
ago.
remember.
I don't remember, but I want to say they did.
Yeah, and if that's the
I don't
case,
remember.
he, he's a 1 out of 5. Like he's not going anywhere. What say you?
I'm gonna go with a 2 out of 5. However, it's not really his. Well, it is his fault, but not for doing a bad job, but for doing too good of a job last year. Boy, did he set a really high bar for himself to jump over this year. I don't think anyone is expecting, Super Bowl, but the fact that they made it to the playoffs this year means they're going to be expected to make it to the playoffs um, this coming season. And if they don't, or this, remember, just because they played well in the first year doesn't mean it's still not a young team. All those players that are rookies, all of those players that are like Tank Dell and CJ Stroud, all of these young players that made the Texans so great are still only second year players. And when it comes down to it, perfect. 45-14 over the Browns in round one. Yeah, they absolutely smoked.
Okay.
So
Yep.
again, you're when you're a young team like that and you have success like that, people expect you to be better without adding. Because what you're adding is experience. You're taking a bunch of rookies who made it to the divisional round of the playoffs, and now they're not rookies anymore. So if you don't make it back to at least the divisional round, there's going to be some questions. Now, I don't think he's getting fired for a 500 season, but if he has a 3, 4, or 5 win season, which is possible with a young team, then management is left with a really tough decision because you have to think about the future of this young team. You have to think, do we get this coach out now and try to get a new guy in while this team is still young and able to be molded? Or do we just lock in with this guy in this core right now? So for that reason, I'm going to put him at a 2, but I think he's pretty damn safe. Sorry for the long explanation.
You're good, man. You're good. You're good. Moving on to the AFC East. The first team I got sitting here is the Patriots with Gerard Mayo.
Safe.
I got him as a 2 out of 5. Like, I don't think he's going to go anywhere. They're going to give him a couple of years to, build this roster. He got the quarterback. And honestly, the reports I'm hearing coming out of the Patriots camp is that Brissett's probably going to be the starter. So they're going to let May sit. If I don't know about the whole year, but at least some of the year he's probably going to sit and Brissett's going to start. And he's got to have time to rebuild that defense and, honestly, this offense, in my opinion. So I gave Gerard Mayo a 2 out of 5. What say you?
Yeah, I think a 2 out of 5 is safe. Wouldn't go all the way down to a 1. I don't think he's going to get fired because of management or because they don't have a good record, because that team is really young or no talent at all. I mean, they were one of the jokes of the league last year. So, I mean, if you've got a rookie quarterback sitting behind Jacoby Brissett, I mean, you can't have high expectations. On top of that, this is a very patient ownership group. Robert Kraft knows that investing in the right people helps you in the long run. So because of that, pretty confident that we're gonna see him at least probably 3 years in New England minimum. The only reason I put him at a 2 is I don't know anything about the dude. What if he turns out to be
Yeah.
another Josh McDaniels, who's just a complete piece
Ooh.
that everybody hates. He's like, he said he's not going to be the Belichick way anymore. He knows that he's a different coach and all of that, but at the same time, taking over a historic franchise with as many wins as the Patriots have, who knows? Guy might let that go to his head and might not be a person management wants around. But I don't know. I just don't know the guy. So
All right. Well, the next team I got is the Bills with McDermott. This one was a hard pick for me, but I got him at a 5.
can we go
Like,
10, 20?
there's no way, dude. The
How
guy
did
should
he
have been
make it
fired. Like,
through?
that's what I'm saying. How did he make it through last season? How bad? I mean, granted, they made the playoffs. They did after a shaky,
Because they have
mid
Josh
part of the
Allen.
season.
Josh
That's what
Allen
I'm
will
saying. You
carry
got
that
Josh
team.
Allen. You got Josh Allen in his prime. You have to win. You've been in the
There
playoffs
is
every year. You've played the Chiefs and you get beat by them every single time. I think honestly, if he does not make the freaking Super Bowl, he's no, he's got to make the Super Bowl. No doubts about it in my mind. He has to make the Super Bowl. You can't do what you've been doing with a quarterback like Josh Allen in his prime. That's probably one of the best in the league, honestly. He's big, he's fast, he can throw. Like, I got him at a 5 out of 5. What say you?
Yeah, 5, 5, 5, as high as this scale will go and above. I cannot believe he made it through last year. I cannot believe it. The only reason was because they, by a stroke from God, they made the playoffs. They threw that away down the stretch of the year. How many games they blew because of terrible coaching decisions. How do you have a top 3 quarterback in the league and do
The
nothing with
Broncos
it?
game.
year after year after year. They are a laughing stock with an incredible roster. The players are getting catty because they don't know what else they need because they're like, we are so damn good. How don't we have rings yet? It's the coach. Fire that man. This is my number two candidate for the person to not make it through the end of the season, right behind Mike McCarthy. Boom, right there. That dude needs to
Good take. Good
go.
take. Uh, the next team we got is the Dolphins with McDaniel. Or yeah, McDaniel. I got him at a 3 out of 5. Like
Oh,
I feel like the Dolphins are gonna if they don't make the playoffs this year, and because like at the end of the season last year they faltered. Like they couldn't beat playoff teams. They couldn't. They were not. I mean, they beat up on the less teams like us last year, hung 70 on us. I hate to remember that, but they beat up on tomato cans. I like to use Broussard, from First Things First. Take tomato cans. They beat up on tomato cans. They couldn't beat playoff teams. And you have the fastest wide receiver. You got Jalen Waddle. You got Tyreek Hill. You got a great run game. You got a good offensive line. You had a solid defense with one of the best defensive minded coaches in the game, Vic Fangio. And you didn't make the playoffs. Like to me, like if they don't make the playoffs this year, I think the Dolphins are going to tear it down. They're going to get a new quarterback. Like they have to at least make the playoffs for Mike McDaniel to be safe. What do you say?
yeah. So the Dolphins are such an anomaly to me because they should be so much better, right? Like the way they play against the bottom half of the league is how they should play against everybody. Like they should beat the bad teams 70 to 20 and then they should beat the good teams 50 to 30. Like I don't get it. It doesn't matter. You can outrun everybody. You have the best wide receiver room in the league. Like Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, what are you supposed to do? And then you've got a quarterback who can throw the ball. That's all you need. You just need a quarterback who can throw the ball because these guys are wide open. Wide open. I don't know why they aren't better. And the thing is, I really don't think it's McDaniel. And I think they move on from players before the coach. I'm gonna put McDaniel at 2 because I think there's a good chance they tear everything down. But man, I think he's got a really good NFL mind, and I think the NFL world really has come to respect Mike McDaniel. And I think they would give him the grace of keeping him through a new quarterback before they got rid of him. But there's no way. I think there's been so many questions around Tua his entire career that there will always be that question in the back of their brain if they let Mike McDaniel go. Was it him or was it Tua or was it something else on the team that just wasn't quite there? Because for me, this team could go from making the playoffs to winning the Super Bowl next year. Like they should be better than they were. And I just don't know if it's taking some more time to click or what. So I got them at like a 2.
Okay. And the last team in that division is the Jets with Robert Saleh. Now, to me, they have to make the playoffs or he's fired. Like you built this roster, you got a good offensive line, you got weapons. Saleh's defense is one of the best in the league. Like he's made that defense good. And you got Aaron Rodgers. Now I understand he's coming off a torn Achilles at the age of 40, but they went out and they traded for him to bring him in because they're in win now mode. And if the Jets fail, which I think they are, they're not going to make the playoffs this year. But if they fail to make the playoffs, that's my opinion. I don't think they're going to make it. But if they don't make it, he's gone. Like because Aaron Rodgers is probably going to retire. I mean, you still have a lot of this good talent on the team, but it's like you need to bring in somebody because you're probably going to wind up drafting a quarterback next year, and you're going to need an offensive minded guy to help that rookie. What say you?
Yeah, very, very similar mindset to you on this one. Um, they gotta win. Their quarterback is really old. He's really freaking good. But I'll tell you what, if Aaron Rodgers plays the full season and they have a first round exit, the whole team's gone. Um, he's made them more relevant than they've been for a while, which is nice. They have a good young core with people like Brees Hall and Garrett Williams or is it Garrett
Wilson.
Williams? Garrett Wilson, that's the one. Yeah, I mean they got some good talent. If Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, there's no reason they shouldn't win they shouldn't be they should be playing against the Bills for the division, if not definitely snagging a wild card spot this year. Um, Now, I think his job depends on Aaron Rodgers. If Aaron Rodgers decides to keep playing, there's no reason to really blow it up. But yeah, if you're gonna get a new quarterback because Rodgers is retiring, just get a new coach and draft what that coach wants. Start fresh, do a proper rebuild, do it the right way. It's New York. You got high expectations. You can't be messing around up there. So I don't know. I'll put him
Yep.
at a 3. It really just depends. I don't think he's just going to get outright fired. I think he's going to go as part of a rebuild or stay and win now.
Okay. Moving on to the AFC North. The first team I got here is the Bengals with Zach Taylor. I got him as a 2 out of 5. And I just feel like Joe Burrow's gonna be healthy this year. He's gonna be back. You know, whenever the Joe Burrow's healthy and he's playing, the Bengals are always in the playoffs, and they make deep runs into the playoffs. I mean, I have no problem saying that Joe Burrow is the starter and he's healthy and he starts all year. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bengals, honestly, not even surprised. It should be a gimme that the Bengals make the Super Bowl. Because they've
Championship
proven,
game, no doubt.
yeah, because they've proven they're like the only team in the playoffs and on the AFC side that can beat the freaking Chiefs.
Yeah.
So, but I got him as a 2 out of 5. He ain't going nowhere in my opinion, unless something disastrous happens.
Yeah, having been the only person who seems to be able to stop Patrick Mahomes, that's a really good thing to have on your resume. He's the type of coach that should be asking for raises, not worried about his job.
Yeah.
Now, there is one thing I will put him at a 2, and this is one thing that will get him fired really quick. There was a lot of questions surrounding Joe Burrow's health last year while he was playing. If that coach is found to be making decisions of not shutting Joe Burrow down when he needs to be shut down, he will be fired because Joe Burrow is the future of that franchise and they should not be risking it for anything. If Joe Burrow is not 90% or better, he should not be playing regular season games. End of story, because you can't risk talent like that. And if it comes down to your coach putting him in or saying, no, not on my watch, that could be a big reason he gets fired. But anything other than that, if Joe Burrow's healthy, fine. He's not going anywhere.
Good take. Good take. Moving on to the Ravens with Harbaugh. I got him as a 2 out of 5. Like, I feel like he's not on the hot seat, but he's gotta win a Super Bowl, man. He has to. Like, this is crazy to me. Like, you're in the playoffs every year. You've had the MVP 2 times since he's been in the league, 2018 and last year with Lamar Jackson, and you got good roster almost every year. Like, they should have beat the Chiefs last year in the AFC Championship game. They were in Baltimore. They should have beat them.
Mm-hmm.
But I just I can't really say he's going to be fired. But at the same time, I don't want to put him at a 1 either because I don't think he is completely safe. What say you?
I 100% hear you on wanting to put him at a 2. I just can't do it if there's maybe 3 or 4 people left in this league in his position. I mean, you're talking about people like Mike Tomlin, you're talking about Bill Belichick's, you're talking about Pete Carroll's, you're talking about people that are going to leave when they want to leave. Harbaugh has done more for Baltimore in the last 10, 12 years, than any other coach really has ever done for that franchise. And he's still got them right where they need to be. And when you're coming down to that close of a miss on a Super Bowl appearance and a team as good as they were, as dominant as they were, yeah, you can maybe point to coaching, but man, you're really not trying to shake up a team like that by moving on from a head coach. The only way you move on from him is a rebuild, which is absolutely not happening at the end of this season. So for me, I gotta put him at a 1. It's Harbaugh. You can't fire a Harbaugh.
All right. Well, going off what you were kind of talking about here, moving on to the Steelers with Mike Tomlin. Now, me and you were probably really going to disagree on this, but the
I
only reason
figured.
why I'm the only reason why I'm putting him at a 4 is because they have to start out hot this year. Like I know the Steelers ownership, they're not, impulsive. They don't fire guys. Like they've only had like what is it, 3 or 4 head coaches their entire team's franchise. But I think this year, Mike Tomlin, he hasn't really been able to upgrade the offensive line. He hasn't been able to find the quarterback since Ben Roethlisberger retired. Um, I got him at a 4 out of 5 because I think this year, like if the Steelers go under 500, I could see the ownership be like, "Whoa, whoa, we're not used to this. This ain't, we need to get a coach in here that can get us a quarterback. We need a quarterback." Um, but like I was saying, it's just if he goes under 500 this year, I could totally see him being fired, and I believe that's a strong, strong possibility of the season. Only for the they have to start out hot because their last 8 games are against the Ravens twice, the Bengals twice, the Browns twice, the Eagles, and the Chiefs. And I think I can't remember who the other team is in there, um, but yeah, they have to start out hot. If they don't, if they're like teetering at 5-5 at midseason or under 500 by midseason, I don't see them going above 500. What say you?
Uh, if they lose every single game this year, it's his first losing season in his career, and you can't fire the man after he has his first losing season. It's hyperbole. If he loses every single game, he should be fired. He's not. He's Mike Tomlin. He just he's done better. He's gotten 10 wins with teams with half the talent he has this year. I, it's hard for me. Like I want to put him at a 1 because it's I just don't believe he's gonna be bad. But I'm gonna put him at a 2 because it's possible, you know, it's possible for them to have a bad year and for him to get fired. And he does have the pressure of being better than the last couple years. If they take a step back with what should theoretically be a better quarterback situation, I mean, maybe you could see some questioning there. But you said it yourself. I mean, this ownership group, I mean, how do you fire somebody that after this many years, like, even if he has an awful season, you can't look at that and think that's going to be the norm for this guy, right? You gotta, like, even if it's the worst season in Steelers history, you gotta be like, dude, 1 year out of how many? Like, give him at least one more try, right? But I don't know. I'm thinking I'm gonna put him at a 1, maybe a 1.5. I don't know. It's Mike Tomlin, man. I don't know.
No, it's all good. That's why we do these shows, man. Everybody's got
Yeah.
their own opinion.
No, but and I hear
Um,
you totally. It's just I will admit I have a big football crush on Mike Tomlin.
all right, well, moving on to the last team in the AFC North, the Browns with Stefanski. I got him as a 2 out of 5. Like after last year, like I didn't like the Browns were good last year. They made the playoffs with the rotational guys at quarterback. And, I just think this is Deshaun Watson's last year. If he doesn't play well, I think that the Browns are going to get rid of him. They're going to have to go out and get their own quarterback or draft a quarterback. And I would really like to see what Stefanski, I think the ownership of the Browns too, would like to see what he could do with his own guy, draft his own guy and develop him. What say you?
I put him at a 2, for a very similar reason. If Deshaun Watson is as bad as he's been, he's done after this year, and they're going to have to go out and get a new quarterback. And I don't think anyone is denying that Stefanski has, really good. He's got a lot of potential. You can see stuff in those offenses and the way the team plays. They play hard. That is a team that plays hard, and honestly, if they had a real quarterback, I'd be really interested to see what the Browns could do. I just think Deshaun Watson is really bad. I think the team and coaching made him look better than he was last year, and he didn't look good. I really think that Deshaun Watson is not the same as he was before all of his stuff and his time
Yeah.
off. It's hard to take full seasons off of pro sports and a comeback. And it's hard to play pro sports with a clouded mind. And this man has probably been doing nothing but that since he came back. I put it at a 2 just because I think there's a chance they just clean house and rebuild. In which case you get rid of the coach too. But more than likely, I think it's just a retool situation in which you get the coach what he wants.
Okay, I got you. So now the last division, the AFC West, our division. I'm going to start off with the Kansas City Chiefs and Andy Reid. This is the first one I got off the scale at a 0 to 5. Andy Reid's not going anywhere. Like
Yeah,
you
yeah.
talked about earlier about the I forgot what team you said it was would revolt. Oh, the
Detroit.
crap, Detroit. They would
Mhm.
revolt if they fired Dan Quinn. I think it would be a full scale riot if the Chiefs fired Andy Reid at all.
I
He's one of
think
the guys like you said that's going to be able to walk out on his own.
I would riot. I would be like, the world's ending. Let's riot. I mean, I wouldn't even. The only reason Andy Reid gets fired is because the world's ending. Like you said, I've said it a couple times. There's only a few of these guys left in this league, and Andy Reid is one of them. He leaves when he wants to. So, I mean, I'll say one just for consistency's sake. But again, it's another one of those guys where he's not going anywhere.
All right, moving on to the next team, the Raiders and Antonio Pierce. I got him as a 2 out of 5, only because, I don't. The Raiders, honest, two reasons. One, the Raiders can't afford to fire him. They can't. They're still paying
Correct.
Josh McDaniels and
Correct.
John Gruden, and I'm pretty
Correct.
sure Mark Davis is one of the poorest owners in the NFL, so he can't afford to fire him.
They got
Um,
they got three head coaches on their roster on their payroll, and they've got a
yep,
rookie at the helm.
yep, and also the fact that the players love Antonio Pierce. Like I remember
Yeah.
watching some the other day, Max Crosby talking about him, saying, "No, everybody loves him. He's a great coach. He really, he's with us in the trend. Pretty much he's like out there on us on the field. Like unless like the Raiders, like I mean, I think honestly they're probably going to be the worst team in the AFC West, but that's not without trying. Like they're going to fight hard for him. They
I
really
think
will.
it's going to be such a pain, and I hate to say this, but man, Antonio Pierce is going to make the Raiders again. Um, a team that maybe once every 4 or 5 years might go on a run, but every other year in between that, it is just going to be the most brutal, punch you in the mouth type of fist fight game where it's just that's the Raiders, man. That's how the Raiders play, and he embodies that mentality, man. And I think he's going to bring the Raiders back to what they were before the whole Gruden situation and be more of a respected team in the league. I put him at a 2 because Davis is a really weird and sporadic dude, and you never know what that man is going to do. But at the same time, yeah, I hear you on him not being the richest, but man, does he have an absolute space station of a stadium in one of the biggest tourist locations on the planet. That stadium makes him so much money that I don't think if he really doesn't like Antonio Pierce, I don't think he'll think twice about firing him. But I think it's really hard to not like Antonio Pierce. So I'm gonna put him at a 2.
Okay. Moving on to the next team, the Chargers with Harbaugh. I got him as a 1 out of 5. He ain't going nowhere. First year, I think this is going to be like somewhat of a rebuilding year for the Chargers. Like, yeah, they drafted a tackle in the first round. They really don't have a whole lot of weapons. We know that they're going to run the ball. He's got to fix the defense. He's got to get weapons. I think he's at least got 3 years at minimum before he's even in a discussion of being on the hot seat. What say you?
Yeah, so 3 years minimum for sure. You don't pull a guy like Harbaugh and not give him at least 3 to 4 years. I mean, this is a dude who is going to. For me, the thing is about this Harbaugh is I don't think he is the best football mind, but I think he is one of the best pickers of football minds, and that's why he's a good coach. Boy, can that man assemble a staff. And that, I think, is his strength. And because of that, I don't think there's any reason this Chargers team is going to blow up the way they have under Staley or any other previous coaches. I think the Chargers are going to stop being the Chargers that we've known for so long. The Chargers going to Charger, I don't think for very much longer, because they have a real coach and a real quarterback. And it's kind of weird because Justin Herbert was too young to take the core of the Chargers with Eckler and Williams and Allen and that really just dominant attack threat. He was too young to take them where they needed to go in their prime. But now he has all of that experience and knowledge from those incredible players that he can now pass on to new weapons that Harbaugh and his new staff are picking specifically for Justin Herbert. Because all of these other players, while they were good, they were there before Justin Herbert and he had to adapt to them. These are going to be new players that are picked specifically for Herbert. And with competent coaching, a good quarterback, and a plan, I think we're going to be scared of the Chargers in the next 2 to 3 years, if not as soon as next season. One or less, if you could, on this one.
Okay. And the final one, the final team in the NFL, our team, the Denver freaking Broncos with Sean Payton. I have him. I know you're probably gonna have him maybe a little bit higher than me, but I got him at a 1 out of 5. He's not going nowhere. Like, it would have to be a disaster. Like, you don't hire a head coach to come in to fix your team, and the quarterback. And then you also let that same coach a year later get rid of him, eat the biggest dead cap money we've ever in history, and then be like, oh, he drafted his guy. We're going to fire him at the end of this year if it doesn't go well. Like, it's not going to happen. Like, if anything, Sean Payton's got at least, I think he's going to play out his entire contract, which I think he signed a 4-year contract or a 5-year contract. I can't remember.
It was a
But
4.
it might have
I'll
been
look it
4.
up.
I'm not sure, but he's gonna work out his entire contract. If at the end of the contract the Broncos are not competing for the AFC West and being in the playoffs, then yes, he will be gone.
It was a
But
5 year.
was it?
5 year.
Well, he played
Mm-hmm.
1 year, so he's still got 4 years left.
Yeah.
But he's going to play this entire contract out, I believe. I don't think the Broncos owners are going to be impulsive. They know this is probably going to be at least a year, if not 2. Not just a rebuild, but even developing Bo Nix to see if he's the guy. Like, this year, to me, like, I wouldn't be like, I got him going 10-7 this year, just based off the schedule and everything. Because I think Bo Nix with Peyton, with him having this guy, is worth 2 more wins than last year. But this is more of an evaluation year to me. They got to see what they have in Nix. They got to see what they have in these young guys. If they're going to be the future, if he's got to go out and get other guys. What say you?
Yeah, I'm right there with you actually. He's a 1 for a lot of reasons. I think he's a 1 for every single reason that you just listed. I agree with 100%. I will go ahead and add on top of that. We can't fire him. Like, we sunk our team to get him. Like, we gave up picks and we're paying him $18 million a year. I know that's not cap space, but this ownership group is the richest in the league. You do not get that rich by spending money stupidly. They want to build a new stadium. They're not going to be paying multiple coaches more than the 2 they already are between Hackett and Sean. I don't know. Are we still paying Hackett, or was he
I
done
think
after that last year?
I
Got one
think
more year?
we got this year. I think he signed a 3-year, so we got this year to pay him, and it's over.
Yeah. So, I mean, they've already got 2 coaches on the roll. They've got a ton of dead money that's going to nobody the next 2 years. And, well, it's not going to nobody. It's going to nobody on your team in the next 2 years. I think they're at the point where they're like, no, we're done spending money. You go do the football thing now.
Yep.
You draft the players you need to draft, develop the players you need to develop. If you need players in free agent, let's find a way to make room with the cap, but we don't have a lot of room for that. So I think at this point we got to wait for dead money to be off the cap before we get a legitimate judge on Sean Payton, which should be about the time that Bo Nix is ready to be fairly judged in about 2 years. So
Dude, yeah, because
I
you
think as
pay
soon as
Russ this
Sean,
year and next year.
yeah, I think not this year, not next year, year after is the first year Sean Payton might even possibly get fired. So
Yeah, because well, even if like even with that, what you said there, like they got Russell Wilson on the cap this year and next year. Next offseason, I think they only got like 32 million they got to pay him because they took the brunt of it this
they
year.
took the 50 this year. So
Yeah, and then I'm pretty sure next offseason they're gonna have close to 100 million in cap. They'll have all
mhm.
their draft picks back, and honestly, even with Bo Nix being 24, a lot of people are freaking out about that. Like, oh, you ain't gonna be able to have him for 20 years. Like 10 years for a franchise guy, that's good. Uh, but
Well,
it can
because
still take
Sean
another
Payton, if he
year.
plays the way Sean Payton wants him to play, and the way he played at Oregon, he could play for 20 years as a 24-year-old.
Yeah.
He's not a Patrick Mahomes. He's not a Josh Allen. He's a pocket
Nope.
passer.
Well, the only reason why I also said that was because a lot of people are like, oh, if you can have him at least minimum of 15 years, then he's not a franchise guy, or just they
Yeah,
freak out
yeah,
about that kind of stuff.
yeah,
But also the fact that it's probably going to take him maybe a year or two to develop. Like, yeah, they say he's the most pro-ready quarterback. He's 24. He's the most mature. But just because you're 24 and you play a lot of years in college doesn't mean you're going to come in and be, the Drew Brees, like a lot of people compared him to. It might take him a year or two to, get fully, immersed into the NFL. So, yeah, Peyton to me, 1 out of 5. He's not going anywhere. I would not be surprised, like I said, he's going to play out his entire contract. And if the Broncos do well, he'll get a contract extension.
yeah. Yep.
So,
I agree. I think he's in a good spot for himself. I think the ownership is fine with where he's at, and there's no reason to do anything in the next few years. So definitely a one there.
all right, cool. Well, that's it for us tonight, guys. We we got through all the topics we wanted to. Well, which is only one topic, but we got through the entire NFL, all the coaches. Baylor, really appreciate you coming on tonight, man. We'll see you in here again next week, but appreciate you coming on tonight, man. You got
Yeah,
anything else you
thanks.
want to add before we get out of here?
Nah, thanks so much for having me. Love talking football. Haven't talked football for a while, so with things starting to ramp up, I'm excited to be doing a couple shows with you, and excited to be back next week.
All right, appreciate it, man. We'll see all you guys next Sunday at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. Talk to you guys later. See ya.
Peace.